Hello and welcome back to Dax's Deviants. This week we are looking at a new topic. So this week we are looking at fetish in video games. And to start off with, I am interviewing Dan Montgomery, the creator of Galaxy Legion. I will preface this episode by saying we did have some audio problems, and because of this, the full transcript of Dan's audio will be available on daxsdeviants.com. It'll be under the blog post for this episode. Please bear that in mind, and I do apologise about the audio quality. I have tried my best to fix it, but there's just some things that the magic of technology cannot fix, and my recording setup wasn't the best at the time. This has been rectified in episodes that you've already seen and upcoming episodes. Big kudos to Dan, who did try his best to help with this audio problem, but apart from recording the entire session again, there was not much we could really do. But I am very happy to promote all of his content and the other content creators, which will be sharing their own video games in future episodes. So please enjoy. Hello, I am Dax, and today we are talking about fetish in video games. Today I am joined by Dan. So Dan, tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Hello, I'm Dan Montgomery. I'm from Seattle, Washington, born and raised. Been making games since I was pretty young, but only was able to get into it a little more professionally coming in my 30s. Yeah.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about your kind of journey as an LGBT individual in the gaming industry.
Yeah, so I came out pretty early in life, like pretty sophomore in high school. And so, back when it was a little bit trickier, but not super tricky at that time. And, kind of seeing the typical things. I know what this felt like as a gamer, as just geeks in general. Other geeks, whether we're not, tend to hold space for people like that, or just in general, it seems like, especially when you go to conventions.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the first things I noticed, was the band geeks, theater geeks, because I was at kind of all these extracurricular activities. Mm-hmm. They seemed to raise me more than everybody else in school. And this not what brought me into gaming, but that helps maintain that sense of love for this industry.
Yeah, and I think that's really good because it's not so much a big thing over here. Like we don't have like band and things, but there is definitely other extracurricular groups that were available. Yeah, pretty much. Just theater is really about it. Like there was music after school clubs and that. But it wasn't really until university that I started seeing a lot of like clubs and societies, because it seemed to be a much bigger thing there. But during my time at university, or the first university I was at, I actually ran the gaming society there, which was great because like I had all my own equipment, so I literally just like cart my computer to university and we'd like try the VR, PS4, things like that. So it was good, but yeah, we never really had that in high school. So, but then I didn't come out until I was like 16, 17.
Okay.
But there wasn't that many gays at my school, to be fair. I think in my year, I was the only openly gay one.
When I came out, it was pretty sparse as well, because this was in the late 90s. And I was sort of seeking people, not actively. I was trying to, be out, but not still, put myself out there too much. But I did notice there was a couple out guys and the color guard. And I was already participating in color at that time, which is attached to the band group that I was in. and it was nice. We even had a gay sub that would come in and teach the code art, and so I felt represented in the scene pretty early in that sense, and in this philosophy.
Yeah. And kind of talking about that, like, what inspired you to develop the kind of games that you've developed, and how is that identity that you have kind of influenced that?
Well, even as a young kid, I was making paper, sort of these choose-your-own adventure style flip games where you would basically draw levels onto sheets of paper, and based on the numbers on the paper, you could go to different.
Okay.
And so it was more of a visual representation of choose your own adventure. Like, I like those kind of books, but I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
And so I'm driven by sort of like visual mediums like that, but just like traditional art games. So I was creating those types of games, just me and my brother growing up. And then we were just inundated with computers because of my dad's profession in electrical engineering. So I was able to do, I just started tinkering away with creating them on the screen. And back when I was in the junior high, we had Macs. And so this was the first time. And there was this program called HyperCard. And I was like, how much you're listening remember HyperCard. But it's basically like a precursor to what web pages would have been, without the internet. And so you would basically just link pages together. It translates to that medium. So just going from paper to HyperCard, and that's what led me to become a web developer. Is sort of that sense of page logic.
Yeah.
But all throughout school, to answer your question, I was using games and making games as sort of a way of setting myself apart other than just being gay, because I need, a lot of queers, we have creative outlets and we have creative mediums that we like to pursue, in any sense of the word, just, looking amazing or being in spaces where we get to show our unique personality. And games was always my way of showing off in a way, because I just felt like it was such a unique skill to combine technical prowess and artistic prowess into one thing. And other people took notice of that. Growing up, it was primarily the older adults to notice, like the teachers, things like that would put me in either, a TA situation in class, or just, realize that I had this skill and heading in the right direction, so I knew what to do post high school. But I would always be pretty influential, just gamer in general. And I was one of the first people in high school to have a Game Boy.
Oh.
And so, the original Game Boy. And so I would bring it around. People would rent it from me, actually. Until they were able to get their own eventually. And then just think that I would always kind of known as a gamer, and that kept me cool, if you will, outside of my other, just affinities that I had that were a little more personal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. God, it was my mum that had the original Game Boy, and she gave it to me when I was younger. I think the first one,
the one of heavy, big plastic one, with the black and white screen.
Yes. But I remember, so I think the first portable console I had was the Game Boy Advance, but I still had my mum's Game Boy games like Tetris, and I think it was Pokemon Red that I had. But yeah, God, that is a blast from
I had Silver.
Oh, see, in primary school, so at the end of the day, we would have this thing, this was on a Friday, on the Friday, the last hour of the day, you got this thing called Golden Time. And that was, if you'd been good that week, you got an hour of just basically doing what you wanted. So, I think it was primary 7, which is the last year of primary school before you move up to high school. Me and my friends would get our DSs with Pokemon Diamond. And sometimes you would have I think he used Emerald to like send Pokemon to each other. So like we'd go and like throughout the week we'd just play our DS, and then like on a Friday we would just like trade Pokemon with each other. And yeah,
that's awesome.
It was just one of these, like, I remember he gave me no, oh god, what was his name? That's terrible. I've forgotten his name.
So yeah,
it'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you, and then you'll scream it. So it's,
we'll just be in the middle of a sentence, and I'll just shout out random Pokemon's name. But yeah, it was definitely like, I feel like gaming's one of the big things that it doesn't matter your background; it's always just kind of there and a part of what people do. And I think especially
it was definitely a unifier for
yeah, definitely, because it was like, yeah, very much the same, like very nerdy. I never really fit in with a clique, so I kind of just went between them. I was kind of the wanderer. But yeah, gaming was always just something that I could just vibe with everyone with, really, especially during that Candy Crush phase.
Oh yeah, the SeattleDan phase.
Oh yeah.
Well, it comes to now with like the Venn diagram of friends I have, whether that's gay friends or whatever.
Yeah.
There still is quite a bit of a separation of circles that I have. So I have much more people in my circle that are geeks and nerds and gamers and that kind of thing than just gay.
Definitely.
Although the overlap is pretty good.
Yes.
In terms of gay people that I like, like last night, I had like a weekly game session with some of your friends of mine, and it's just wonderful. Because we always seem to put up even more than when I play with other friends. So, which
is always an added bonus.
Nice. And we were playing a murder mystery dinner, like a murder mystery game, and we just spun it into like the most gay. We should record it. It was so fucking hilarious. It was just so twisted and weird, and we were saying at the end, because we had to dress up for it as well. We're like, this would not have felt the same if we were just straight people acting it out, because we're adding so much extra cancer to this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like, I think that's kind of one of the good aspects of it, is you do get this kind of diversity almost, but it's just one of those things. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it's adding our perspectives to it. It's so fun.
It just changes.
We don't do that.
No, exactly.
We see games and just like movies or any other medium of entertainment, and we want to set ourselves excited.
No, exactly.
And when we kind of are in these situations where we role play, whether that's Dungeons and Dragons or an online game, like once we have, you just get the sense of like you can fill it with your own personality and creativity and all kind of stuff. That's why when I started getting to the role playing side of interests in games, that taught me something about the sort of the specialness and uniqueness of those aces. Like the ability to create your own character, sort of embed your own personality into it and tell your own story. And it gives people the permission to go further, with play.
And
absolutely. So I've always just loved games like that, and that's why to this day, that's the type of game I like to make. Games.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I really prefer those. I feel like by creating your own character, I feel like you connect with them a lot more. Like, I don't know, have you played anything like Genshin Impact or games where you have
I'm familiar with this
where you get the choice of boy or girl, and that's it. You don't get any customizations. It's just, all right, do you want to be the boy, do you want to be the girl? And I feel like it's I don't want to say it's a good game. It's an enjoyable game, is what I will say. It's enjoyable for
play or
yeah, it's enjoyable in the sense that you get good storyline, the graphics are pretty, and the characters are great, but you just don't feel the same connection to the main character as you do in a game where you've got to pick who your character is.
Your own destiny.
Yeah.
It's
it's very narrow, very one way. You can't really do much about it, and it's kind of sad. I just don't feel like the connect is there with the player. And I feel like if you're
that's a challenge too, because getting the player to make their own backstory or make their own character in such a deep, just like in Game D, or DL, you're sort of inferring that player needs to somehow fill in that gap with their own mind and their own story that they want for themselves. With some other exceptions, given what that character might be doing in the game, what story they may be involved in. But you're asking players to do more. But I think that's, myself included, what people will want to do, especially queers, because we don't get to see ourselves represented, and why not act out the representation that we feel like we've been craving?
Yeah, no, exactly.
The other side of things.
No, because
it's like you want to be a deviant pop or whatever. You want to be, a barbarian lord. You want to be, a hero or dream to be a villain. You can be those things in certain games. In other aspects, you get to be someone that's a little more nuanced,
yes, no, exactly.
Regarding your level of quirks and kinks. So
yes, no, exactly. Because I feel like some games try to do it well, like Cyberpunk 2077. The customization level is insane, where you can even choose genitals and things, but you then have the choice of 2 men that you can actually hook up with in that game, and I'm like, okay, there's several women that you can choose between, but there's only 2 men that you can hook up with, and I'm like, well, that's not really representation for the boys, is it?
And I'm not pointing this term out and just butchering it, but there's a sense of, I'm using Mass Effect as an example, where you have gay characters, you have bi characters.
Yep.
But a lot of the characters that you see in these games are what we call main characters at school. So they're just into you if you do X, Y, and Z missions, or whatever. You could look anything. You could have any backstory, and they're still into you, and because they just programmed it such that it doesn't matter what gender represents, for instance. And that's nice, but I feel like characters like Cortez, even though I really like this story too much, are more impactful because they're gay.
Yes.
And they will always be gay, and there's no difference in what you choose. They will be into a male Korean character, and their story won't change depending on your choices. They're not going to flip to you just because they did a particular interesting moment for them. No, they are into dudes, and that's what's going to be. I find that the stories obviously are challenging, but they're those, me as a gay person, that is much more impactful and resonating than just like a hating character where, they're just going to be into you, but you have to do X, Y, Z, no matter what you present as. And to me, that, like, could I know that? It's like, does it mean as much to me to know that if it was a female character, they do like a made that thing? So it sounds like, but I feel like main character sexual, in my opinion, is less of a powerful creative choice in games because it's the easy game.
Yeah, because is that not I would consider that the same as Fallout 4 then? because you have all of these companions, but I mean, with that, it is based on your actions. You can do things they will like, or you can do things that they will not like. But I think most, if not all, of the NPCs that can follow you around, apart from the robots, I think, are romanceable.
And I feel like that's fine as long as they identify by us. You see what I'm saying? So at no point, like, for instance, with Kaden, if you were female and you were romancing him, he wouldn't say anything about it being bisexual, having that as an identity. That just doesn't exist. They won't put that out there as their main preference, even though secretly program-wise, kind of what they are. And what I'm saying is kind of missing is, at least with the identifying characters, they mention, like Ted, like the ex-husband and things like that. To kind of gives the player, regardless of who you're playing as, a sense of, no, this is my identity, it's this way. And it makes that character a little more real.
Okay, yeah, no, and I get that, because, yeah, I do feel like, I can't remember what character it was in Fallout 4, but they definitely, I think they'd mentioned having a wife at some point, and then you can romance them and suddenly they're very lovey-dovey with you. So yeah, I think that is very much the same as that, where it's main character sexual. Interesting. I hadn't really considered that as a thing before.
I don't know if I should write parodies. I might have heard that somewhere.
No, I like it though. It's very relevant in a lot of games that you see where they do offer kind of romance options. Stardew Valley, there's another one. There's a friendly friendly one. That's very good example of that.
Perfect example.
Yeah, because you know me, I always go for the himbo. And yeah, he always went after, was it Emily? I think he went after, or he was coining after Emily, like hang out during summers, but then you can romance someone and suddenly he's just like, okay, I won't see her anymore.
Yeah, and that's an interesting example, because not only that, but if you romance too many people, they punish out. That's why then.
No, I don't think that's a spoiler.
I can describe you as a group, and it is kind of, but I mean, it's a little bit of a different angle, but there's also not a lot of representations of like poly situations.
No, exactly.
And that's true in a lot of romance games in general. Like, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with characters presenting it monogamous or whatever, and they certainly do. There just needs to be a little bit more examples, and Baldur's Gate has a little bit better example of how to do that well. Characters all might have just different preferences for monogamy versus the other forms, and they will through that in one way or the other.
Yep, they'll get jealous. No, I actually forgot about kind of Baldur's Gate for a moment there. Yeah, because again, that's one that's very much fully custom build for your character, and then your romance options are very open. But everyone's very clear. Everyone's a little bit bi in that game, I think.
Everyone's a little bi, yeah.
Some more than others. But yeah. Neil Newbin. What a man. Anyway, before I get off on another tangent talking about very nice voice actors, so what are some of the challenges you've faced as an LGBT developer, and how have you navigated them?
Great question. I think as an LGBT developer personally, most of the trial and tribulations I face are just the same, I would say, as an LGBT career person.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, pre-beginning, I've been in pre-beginning era. I worked for a startup. I worked for large company, and in Seattle, it's a pretty nice place to work in a diverse of people and environments and hierarchy. wasn't a lot of pushback for me showing my own personal interests or creativity or, my background. I was pretty open pretty early as an individual. And if I started to get into, OCL, things like that, I don't say I hid it from the community. Obviously, my social medias and everything were quite public. I didn't really use it as an angle, I would say. As much as I would say I would like to, and was sort of like the presenting that in the future or something I would like to do more. But it does, now that I think of it, sometimes when you're working on these projects and people see you as, a certain identity or whatever, they may use that against you, but thankfully, it is so outside of just, the general angst of running a game like this. The community been pretty embracing, not necessarily my queerness, because that doesn't seem to happen in everything. Just in terms of, me itself or me as a creative person, having those moments where, I can be vulnerable with that and share a little bit more about my interest in personal life. Although it hasn't happened that often, it seems like when it has happened, people have been warm in their response to it. So that's nice. But I would say, just frame it in a sense of what has been most difficult. That's tricky because, I've always sort of had this sense that, I don't necessarily have had many direct issues other than just interpersonal people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those were like one-on-one with certain colleagues I've worked with who, have just said really irritating things to me for no reason. Just about, what do you think my lifestyle is all about or making assumptions based off that.
Yeah.
But, in terms of the gaming sphere, I've been and maybe it's just because I'm tall and look like imposing. They too much. But or maybe they will set it in the shadows. But yeah, I sort of led with my creativity a lot more than a game is when it comes to my professional life.
Yes.
And maybe that's a hindrance. Maybe that's just been like a defense mechanism. But I've always tried to say, I'll let the work speak for themselves. And if people want to project what they think the work entails outside of an explicit sense of awareness, that's really on them. So the door will stay for me in this sort of thing.
Yeah. And do you know what? If people are going to judge, let them judge, because, I mean, I have seen your work. I'm a big fan of your work. So, your creativity speaks for itself. If they want to judge you after that, then so be it. There's too many.
Yeah, and with that said,
too many people just judge far too quick.
Yeah, with that said, I'm taking a little bit too long to sort of put my own gayness into work. Not say that it's required for all creatives to do that or somehow embed pieces of their gay history or their gay personality into their work. But I haven't done that as much as I would like to. And that's one thing that me and my current writer have made to challenge ourselves, is to tell more stories that are a little bit more personal to us and unique to us as queer people. Because as we know, as I said earlier, I just don't think there's enough, and why not take that opportunity, to do that, before we get too far in, it's more difficult to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. And I always feel like Seattle is the place to go for, early inclusivity and things, because you have Grey's Anatomy, which again is started off as Seattle Grace. But they were very quick to introduce a bi character, because they introduced, I think it was Callie originally that they introduced as the kind of bi character. And she had her fling with George, and then she was just straight up lesbian for a while.
Yeah, and I think there's a distinction between Seattle representing creative work and Seattle as a city has its own sense of like representation of people that live here. I'm not just saying there's a huge difference, but it's often when I see Seattle fiction, whether it's games or whatever, it's kind of hilarious. Maybe you have to do to get a lot of rain, but a lot of it is the rain.
Yeah. I mean, if you're anything like Scotland, then yeah, it rains pretty much constantly.
But this is a very queer city, very creative group of people in the city that I probably spent my days so that you travel a bit, but it's hard to find any early from a city that I think I love more at this kind of life. Maybe some Colorado.
Oh, good old Colorado. Is it not colder there though?
I don't know. I say definitely cold, but like we don't get super extremes like other cities.
Yeah.
So if anyone describes a city as anything, they just can't describe it as the worst of that thing. I can point to the difference that it has the worst thing of that category, whether it be snow and any kind of weather. So
okay, I mean, yeah, that's
so hot.
Yeah, we just get rain because the town I'm in is a really weird elevation, so you end up getting worse rain than some of the cities, and
Remind me what town it is again.
Oh, so I'm in Livingston, which is not too far from Edinburgh. So
I'm so trying to remember.
Yeah, so it's at a weird elevation because it's at like the top of a U-shaped valley. You end up getting like worse rain, and just the wind is terrible sometimes. But yeah, it's the joys of non-city living, I suppose. But anyway, but back to the fun topic that is at hand. So what was the core concept of Galaxy Legion, and what sets it apart from other games?
Well, the core concept was around my love for sci-fi and RPGs and strategy games. So originally it was a creative amalgamation of those things. And the first thing was created at a time when a friend of mine was playing a lot of games on Facebook. She was ended enough that I took notice and was asking her about them. And one of those games was Off Wars. And she was saying how she enjoyed it and how much she just couldn't get off of it. She's playing games like Farmville and those kind of things. Those casual games that you play in the browser.
Yep, the Facebook
I just
ones.
remember watching her play them and thinking like, well, this costume that I had for sort of a planetary, sci-fi based building kind of bulk game to sit in this paradigm. So I remember I was flying home like that weekend, and I was just fucking something down on the plane.
Yep.
And I just started to put together like a flat screen and things like that, just kind of see it as something that I could technically do. And that's probably how I had a little bit of a little pre-demo concept of just the planetary screens, things like that. And I thought, okay, I could make this work as a casual sci-fi, RPG experience, for Facebook. And I started building up from there. And I used some of the, ideas that I had or inspired by other games that I used to play. Games like Dark Troll 2 and Master of Orion and things like that.
Interesting. So it's kind of like, obviously it's entirely your creative, but it's an amalgamation of different things here and there to create this amazing new product then.
Yeah, definitely. I would say amalgamation is the best because, one of the challenges of these games is they just don't feel like exactly any other game. And even I was at a convention recently and, we're trying to explain what it is or what they are. And so, for the first game, I would say it leans more strategy.
Yeah.
And for Apocalypse, it leans more adventure. And so, if we had to distill down to, a few words, RPG adventure, or RPG strategy, but also just sort of RPG element, because I like the fact that you pick your character, elements of your sound traits, and you take a character name and you sort of go out into the galaxy and of your own sense of identity based off of that. That is all very key, to any of these.
No, and that is, I mean, the first one, I've played a fair bit of the first one at this point. I think I've played maybe 3-4 months of it at this point. It's been a while. Obviously not as experienced as some of your more experienced players.
We've been writing well over, I think, 13 years now. I've lost count. But over a decade of the server writing. So
long time.
It's a long time for a game to go.
But the fact that it's still going and still has a really good player base is kind of an indication that you have made something that is unique and enjoyable. And it is interesting the various concepts of, especially the first game, because obviously the second game is very much getting updated, and you keep adding new things. So it's, every time I log on, it's something new every day. It's wild. But the original, certainly, there was a lot to learn, but it was easy to learn because everything is very much, I don't think integrated is the right word to use.
In front of you.
Yeah.
That's definitely one of the challenges of how it's presented in the scale one Apotheos, is because the first one, you had everything all in video all the time.
Yeah.
And so you don't really lose your place. You get a sense of, who's under multiple menus, and it's less complexity than in the second one. So that's what a challenge is, just, find explaining mechanics in such a way it just feels natural for people to use. And that's when we're really getting the, core concepts sort of in front of player right away. But because of an exploration game in the second one, primarily, at least in the early stages of gameplay, it's tricky to, players just want to be told what to do, essentially. They want to be sort of propelled into their first set of decisions. And that's, it's tricky when you have an open sandbox situation, because depending on where you are, you might have something different entirely than you would ask the players to sort of try for the first time. So that's something we're still playing with, is how best to get players to do this exploration kind of and propel themselves on their own. They have that sense of open adventure, feeling lost, but still kind of having their mechanics in front of them to use.
Yeah,
was what we were kind of going for. Versus the first game, we kind of tell you to start doing missions right away, it's doing battling right away. They sort of get you going on these basic concepts very early. Whereas in a second game, you may not want to do those things because there's so many other things you can do. And the combat component is completely off for many people. So, Yeah, it's more challenging to get people to that side of understanding. But because it's an amalgamation of my favorite things and my favorite styles of gameplay, we're actually going at it.
And I mean, I remember the first time that I played Apotheosis, which is, I think I played it day of release, mainly because Flatmate is a very, very long-standing fan. So he had kind of encouraged me to try it, because I think he was part of the closed alpha. So it's him that had said, they're releasing beta today, you need to play it. And I was like, all right, okay, fine. And yeah, I remember getting in, choosing my alien race, getting my name and everything, and then choosing a ship. And then I just remember, like, obviously because it's very early days, it was just like, here you go, here's a universe, and I'm like, all right. I fucked up so badly to start with, but I think it was just because I was like, oh my god, there's so much to do. So you kind of, I wasted a lot of resources from the get-go. I will admit. I was just like, oh,
but that's what
I can just teleport somewhere random. Oh, let's just spend this, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh, I needed that specific resource for something. Now I need more.
There's a lot of things like that where we're going to be hiding more elements that we consider part of the game. Because just giving everybody all the options right off the bat, that's not always the best idea. But that's essentially how we play this force. Which is just like, okay, here's literally all the mechanics at your disposal. We don't have to wait to see yourself. We just engage them by those things like that.
Yeah.
But that has gotten us in trouble because a lot of people couldn't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that because it was like a lot thrown at you at once. But I did notice today when I was on that there is now little tutorial pop-ups.
Yeah, we've been adding more of those recently.
Yeah.
This is off of where we think that the most important details to give players for some of these early attacks. And, it's good things, it's explanatory, but it's nice to at least reiterate to people what our intentions were for them so that there is any confusion.
Yeah.
And even though there's buttons that have action words on them, we explain what those would do the first time so that, people click on them, they still have a sense of like, okay, I'm going to just click around and then feel like I know what I'm doing. So there's a way to say that if players like they kind of
exactly
gotten down and figured it out, and then they can kind of just keep exploring from there. But essentially, I mean, there are elements of the game that you can't really explain because it's inherent in the nature of exploration.
Yeah.
Some of the secrets, since they're out there, you don't want to tell them where to go because
that would spoil it.
By going to those places on your own, you get this sense of wonder from figuring it out yourself. And so, even in our Discord, we have it just sort of organically became a place where you can share a lot of information, but at a certain point, people like to have spoiler warnings for certain things, which is nice.
Yes. And yeah, I certainly feel like there is certain things that people are very, I mean, it's a great community you've got, I'll say that much, because people are very willing to help out. They also love to do a little bit of hazing if you're new to the game.
Yes.
Well, mainly the first one, but yeah. But I certainly found that, like, yeah, it was the research aspect to begin with that I didn't realize that when you do certain actions for research, you don't just get research points, you do get specific research enhancements, I would say, that kind of go into your character's kind of repertoire of skills.
Yeah, so in the first game it was very simple system. Like when you did research, which basically generated research that was
Yeah.
You just get this bulk of research points, and you could spend those on any category. And what was okay in the second game, we wanted to represent of interest that you have in a game. So if you're doing biological stuff in the research, we wanted you to include your we call it your study or your studies in those specific categories, and that would unlock things in the game that were related to like genetics and biology and things like that. So that's one of those tweaks that we made. Obviously, add a little complexity, but once you kind of understand it just kind of makes sense.
Yeah, like once I realized which research was giving me like what points, it was kind of like a light bulb moment of, oh shit, I know what I need to do now. Like I need to focus on these areas. Which kind of like after that again, I think early on because I was very new to like the original Galaxy Legion, and then after only playing the first one for, I think I'd only been playing it like a few weeks before I started playing the second one. I was still very new to everything, so like it was a lot of fumbling about for me. But that's just because I was just like, oh, this game has great visuals. Let's just do everything all at once, and that is absolutely not how I should have done things. But hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Totally.
And just on kind of the themes of Galaxy Legion, while it's not specifically focused on fetish themes, in what ways does it reflect or engage with the LGBT identities and experiences?
There's some interesting stories that we weed into the current universe here. So I have some amazing neighbors, some good neighbors that I've known for years, and we done some just amazing trips together, things like that. And I wanted to incorporate sort of their personality into the game as well. So we created these things called acrobats, and they're basically sex bot, but we don't explicitly say that are sex bots. We say that they perform acrobatic moves for you. Wink, wink, that's
interesting.
Yeah, and you can find that in like certain bars and certain clubs and things like that. And by interacting with new games, which are basically like, and they all have insane names like Bottoms Up and the Swallow and things like that. And each one will give you or your ship assistant bonus to very bonus.
Okay. Yeah.
So the Swallow is, but it can be interpreted multiple ways too. So the Swallow is basically, it's supposed to represent the sense of like, swallowing juices, if you will. But you trigger it by drinking with the acrobat. You trigger it by basically like hitting big shots with that.
Okay.
And so in one aspect of the game, we were like, we need to sort of explain that. So currently in the game, we do this little trick where all the acrobats are very fast at now facing. So we wanted, whether it was spade order game, we wanted players to sort of realize and interact with them regardless of their sexuality.
Yeah.
To sort of like challenge them to say, you're gonna have an opportunity with a female representing one who's just not yet. You're gonna have to kind of go through this acrobatic act with a male facing bot, even though they're just and we have dialogue game to sort of represent. Hey, well, do you have another female facing bot? Like, yeah, well, they're coming.
Yeah.
We have those kind of sprinkled all around the system, and so they have a couple of them are sort of named after a friend. He's a little the kinkier friend of mine.
Yeah.
So we have a Shen bot and an Alice bot. And like for the Alice bot, an amazing bot with a friend of mine. We have some dialects. Yeah, they're always full, but we're taking care of that.
I love that. That is, it's a nice homage to your friends. Also a good way to kind of immortalize them forever as, sex bots in a video game.
Yeah, and they're fully aware, totally I wouldn't say awe, but they're fully okay with how they're represented in that game. So, because they're, it's nice to also be a circle of friends that are, sex positive, positive, consent forward. And so they taught me a ton about, how to interact in this world with other people in those days. Because, and I had to do something to honor that. So that's why, I put that little key in there. It's just like, okay, thank you for showing me, how to be a better lover and a better person.
Yeah, and I think being immortalized in a video game is kind of one of the sweetest gestures that, you can get.
Well, yeah, I think, I don't know who said this, is like, provide what you know when you're doing fiction.
Yeah.
And why not pull from the people in your life that mean a lot to you? Because I think players may not realize, but most of the second game, most of the stories that they read has a lot of inspiration from real life stories in my life, and in that case, life. So whether it's Captain Peach or one of these other characters, all of them were based off of real situations with real people. Not that it happened in some extent it was spaceships, but the element and the feelings behind it, and sort of like the grand narrative was created by some real crisis or some real issue, or some really interesting story that came up in our lives. The bots included.
Yeah, and I think that it's like a really personal touch, because I think too often today you see a lot of video games that are they've taken one idea, they've ran with it, and they just use it as a cash grab. So it's really nice to see kind of video games that are being developed with love and passion, and are based on actual experiences. Obviously, changed a little bit to fit the narrative of the theme.
Yeah, right.
But I think it's
and that's a trick. Is how do you make something marketable but yet so personally relevant to me and I would say the players, just people who experience the narrative stories and all the other details that you put in, because I think it doesn't matter. I think people do notice. People sometimes comment on the Discord, some of the writing, some of the dialogue, things that are just about. And that is meaningful, because that means that the effort that we spent and the time that we invested to make things pop out of the chaos has really been respected or just enjoyed.
Yeah, and I feel like it's quite a difficult thing to pull off. Kind of developing that unique storyline that is very personal. And just kind of off the back of that, could you walk me through the development process of the game, and how did you incorporate feedback from your LGBT friends and your own experiences into your game development?
Well, the first game was very much sort of a hobby project when it first originated. I was, I wouldn't say early webbed out in terms of, my full range of skills. I was pretty early in my development career, and I was still working full-time job, on the side. So it was very much, I will do this in my own free time and sort of build it up as it went. And we did essentially go viral in the early stage, kind of after right around the lead gen update. So it was able to sort of ride that high and allow me just focus all my free time on it that I had, which was not a ton, but sacrificing social lifestyle for a bit of it.
Yep.
And a lot of feedback came from the players, and we had a pretty active forum back then, and people like your roommate and other teams that were in that early stage of the development were very adamant and very they wanted to see certain changes and wanted to continue to get updates, and we wanted to continue to do that. It was a bit of getting into a cadence of what frequency of updates we could do. Back then was a lot more. But as the years went on, through like personal turmoil and death in my family and things like that, divorce, all the siblings that happen, and as you get older,
yep.
I wasn't able to devote as much time on it as I would have liked, and sort of let it maintain itself over the years. And as I got into the post-decade time frame of the game, I wanted to continue to create something that was more modern and kind of roll forward all these ideas that I've been collecting from players, myself, and just like how storylines evolved in the first game, and into something a little bit more concrete and a little bit more, I guess you could say, MMOS. So that's why I started to down some ideas to create this, I think, hypothesis. And as we got closer to, I would say like 6 months in, maybe a little bit more, we rolled it out to the alpha because we wanted to just get an early sense of what people thought. And so we created this item in the first game that essentially, if you had played for over 10 years, which is quite a long time, you were invited into the alpha. And that it was a controversial item because it costs a lot of in-game item resources to get that. But essentially, it allowed people to gain some of the advantages by like exploring what the galaxy felt like very, very early. And we had a small group of alpha players that were amazingly valuable in the development of what the new game beta, which came out a while ago. And it has been growing and building at a rapid pace since. This is now a full-time job, whereas before I've been always be doing this sort of alongside a full-time job. And was nice because I didn't have to worry about, if the game isn't paying a lot of money, or is able to like pay its monthly costs that weren't like, it wasn't a huge deal to kind of all work out over the course of the year. But now that the first game and this one are running simultaneously, and the second game is sort of an active development, it's definitely it's a lot more pressure, to get a lot of these feedback rounds and the actual, monetizations are kicking in, so that the second game can't sustain itself into the development phase. And all throughout this, and all throughout this process, we learned. Well, I decided to put this on myself. I learned the value of feedback much more viscerally. As a creative, sometimes when we hear criticism about our work, or regardless of where it comes from, whether it's a friend or even just a person that you don't know that as a stream of feedback, take new challenge and just sort of hear it and pull it back out of a place of love and respect. Because everyone frames their work in a different way, and how they put out what they think needs to change. And it took me a long time to sort of come to this place where it can take feedback of all forms, even harsh criticism in a very personally exactly kind of way, and distill it into the essence of what the person's trying to say, because every comment is valuable. So in the second game, we decided to do an in-game recording system that's a little different. Instead of sort of treating it just like, you're recording an issue, we have sort of a 2-segments type of system where if it's a bug that doesn't go to everybody, we can make that bug public so that everybody can kind of see what we're working on. And when we fix that issue, if it was a first person to have mentioned that issue, they get a reward.
Okay.
And we're working on a couple of different forms. They can come from, just our standard imprint system, which is sort of what we call our achievements.
Yeah.
Or it can be represented as in-game items, depending on the severity and how pervasive it is. And so that's nice because it's allowing us to record people directly, not just from the beta, but when the beta wraps up, hopefully this summer or this fall, we can use it for just general issues that people have. So just trying to make it a little bit more rewarding for people to do so, because we do get a lot of people who do report issues, and we want their time and effort for doing so to be rewarded. Anyhow, it was a lot easier to do that. We had about 20 to 30 people in the alpha, and so and within that group, there was I would say like a dozen or less that were super active, and we wanted to reward individually. It's hard to do that when we're in a different phase where we have a lot more people to interact with. So rather than sort of reaching out to them one-on-one, having the same system has been helpful for that.
No, definitely. And do you feel like people are like going out their way to look for bugs, or do you feel like people are just playing the game and as they come across a bug, they're reporting it?
I feel like it's clever. Going out of their way at this stage of the development process is a little harder, just because the nature of the bugs that are found now are very situational and based on the locations that are in, or things like that, rather than larger mechanical problems. Even though those are still found, a lot of those have been sort of adapted already.
Yes.
So usually it's around a certain NPC or a location that's kind of weird, it has some inconsistencies. But they'll just survive it too. But players are usually finding those as they're exploring, as they're sort of chatting with a certain character and seeing something is a little just and they can report it at the location that are in, which is nice because we can actually see very accurately where and when and exactly what issue they had, rather than they have to find and type on it, and it just sort of less for them to know where they're at.
Yeah, I know, because I think I've used the button once or twice, but it's mainly just been an NPC speaking to you and their audio just cuts off halfway through a paragraph. You're like, oh, okay. But again, I don't think that's like a big bug. I think that's just a rendering bug. So it's not.
Yeah, but like things like that, if we, if they're reported, we want them to reward the player who reported it.
Oh yeah,
so,
definitely.
Highly encourage all that. Like we can do this ourselves. I definitely, used to be a game. I used to be a software tester. Before I got into development, that was sort of how I got into the industry, and so I can understand the value of a good bug. It's gold, and so it just seems like a lot of people have figured out how to log good bugs. I don't know how they learned that, or it's just the nature of the type of game they're used to it, or what systems they've been interacting with in the past. But we have some really great bugs that have come in well worded and so you sent back information and that. So we're super grateful for the players to do that.
Yeah, no, which is it's really good that you have kind of a good community that does that, and don't exploit it, because I do know there's other games out there where somebody has found a particularly interesting like bug that say duplicates an item or that, and then players will sneakily share it amongst each other on how to get infinite
Yeah.
of X items. So no, it's really good that the community is kind of actively looking.
Well, I wouldn't say that doesn't exist our universes as well.
Okay.
I made a comment in a story that, if something seems exploitable, there's a certain type of players or personality where they may not report it because that is seen to them the ultra advantage to, just essentially that's what it works from. Okay. But we want to offer incentives like larger bounties, potentially conscious bounties, for finding things like that. It's not to say that it's going to counter, the reward of holding that information close, but we do have players that have done that and that sort of mentality. It could be good for the game. They will hold things like that close to their chest, and that's why we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to quash that level of type of issue early. Sort of issues that even remain the first game. Things are hard to fix regarding, things that happen multiple times a day and things like that. Because if there's an exploit in the game, even it's only a matter of time until it is found. It can stay hidden only for so long. And then at that time it is found, it's really dependent on the type of player that has discovered it, whether it will relay that information or not. And so we just, we wanted a sense of open transparency. So because, we're very clear in our terms of service that, if you do find the issues and you don't report it and you continue to use them, that's the kind of thing that can result in a ban. And we don't like to do that because that's not fun for anybody or us. It's not fun for the players. It just creates the sense of like bad air, around both sides of the fence. And so it's much nicer for us to go through it through the reporting system because, not only can we reward the person for doing that, but then, we can actually make it fair for everybody in general. So.
No, exactly. And with a game that has kind of a good community, that's exactly what you want. Is you want people to be, happy and trusting of each other, even if they're gonna shoot each other out of the sky. You're kind of hoping that they're not keeping game breaking exploits to themselves.
And in the meantime,
it's just not fair for those that are trying to do things the normal way.
Especially people who are not capability. That's the higher mentality. They have a sense of the game's mechanics. They figured that out well, but they're not doing things a little bit beyond the norm. And so, we certainly want to know those issues because catching every full organization is difficult. But we don't necessarily just want to leave it to the players to sign up this thing either. So we're constantly trying to monitor and sort of see if things look awry and investigating weird problems that might occur, and the periphery of those things. And I would say fortunately, the way things have been built and sort of re-engineered in the second game, crossing our fingers here, but there's a lot less in that going on, and I think that will be inherent in sort of this how it was built, but it's also going to be something hopefully that will come out when more competitive gaming, PvP and more base battles, things like that become a little more common. So.
Okay. I mean, that's quite an interesting thing to think about. And just kind of off the back of that, I know you're talking about PvP and that there, but when it comes to kind of the topic of this podcast, about fetishes in video games, Galaxy Legion doesn't directly address these. We do know that we have the sex bots, but how do you feel about representation of fetish themes in video games? Do you think there is a place for it, or do you think it's something that kind of should be in very niche media?
I mean, I'm biased because I consider myself a little bit of a fetishist. But I feel like more is better. I think that there are definitely some good examples of games that have representations of fetishes often, and just alternatives, if that's even the right word to use, types of games. But I do think that there's definitely not only a place for those, even in the multiple genres, because you tend to find them in games with a lot of story, like RPGs and things like that.
Yeah.
It just makes sense because we discussed earlier, just more identities get to be represented and things like that. But I also feel like even in the other genres that we tend to take for granted as having more of a westernized take, on identities, where it's like first-person shooter. I do think there's places in all those systems for those types of things to be shown and respected, and even like honored, because it's just their flavor of the type of people that we are, and so why not? We have games that literally have head getting blown off and spine being pulled out of people's torsos.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me that in those cases and those ratings and those types of interests that players have, that there can't be a sexual and a sexual SFG element that can't coexist or even sit alongside those things. Not even to say that they have to be in violent types of games, but just in terms of games that would fit those types of demographics. I think a lot more makers need to challenge themselves on what players think that they want or what they think players want, because Baldur's Gate was a perfect example of this, when they took some risks, on showing certain themes and elements that would be considered pretty different, to the audience. But they were embraced wholeheartedly. In fact, what that kind of indicated to me was that it's almost like it's an endurance from that type of content, and we've been waiting for more creators to sort of do that into these places, and there's just enough of it.
No, definitely, I would agree with you there. There's definitely a kind of, in my opinion, a lack of kind of fetish media out there, especially regarding video games. They either go far too niche, or they make an attempt to incorporate it, but it's I think a good example of it would be Fallout New Vegas, with the robot that you can repair, that you can have quote unquote sex with, where it just says assume the position and then fade to black, and then I think exactly. You get a status buff for that. So it's like they're like, oh yeah, we'll try and implement something kinky, because back in, God, when was that released? 2008, I want to say, New Vegas. I'm probably wrong with that. No, I must be wrong with that.
Yeah, they're more willing to show all sorts of violent acts explicitly in real time throughout the entire narrative, and so
exactly.
Yeah, it shows a sense of like lack of just, I guess, to show the things that we want to see. And, whether somebody doesn't want to see them or not, it's really up to them being able to skip shortcutting, really, but not necessarily, I would say, a lack of interest. I think there's a lot of interest. It's just, for creators, they need to be challenged more to include those things in their narrations and even in their live play, whether it's often you can do, as a mechanic and things like that. So that's why we've been trying to play with that a little bit more. It's just how can we show a level of expression of fetish that a player can participate in, obviously options like me, but not having the option or not having the ability to show that it exists in the worlds doesn't make sense anymore. At least not that it's, not since we've had the level of practice that will make it less silly.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We're past that point now. We can show everything with as much, detail and as much honor as a movie. And so, we can't lean on that old thing of, we don't want to show that it doesn't look too kooky. I used to play secret games growing up, and that was my huge interest of play to adventure. Yeah. And there was a series called Leisure Suit Larry. I don't know if that's true about that series, but they took a risk in going into this space. They censored a lot of stuff, and they definitely didn't show the but in their phrasing and everything else. They were able to at least push the envelope a little bit, and I feel like there just needs to be more games that are pushing it. And I can see the word even push insinuates going beyond the pale here, but it's just stuff that we have been asking for. And there just isn't enough of it in the stickers themselves. Certain games, regardless of whether they have violence in them, clearly, I'm not necessarily a first-person shooter. So more games that have options that can do not just enhancing play, I think that is just as relevant as something that a player might dive into for violent impulse, like scratch status too. Not to say that you need to go full horn sound, because those exist. But they should be consistent to, a mechanic or a certain element of, something that you would pick, as your style of character or something like that.
Yeah, I know exactly. I know the modding community is one of the big reasons behind. Because Skyrim and all of that, and I know that it was kind of was it the modding community that was the reason that Blender jumped 10 years of technological advancements, all because of it was BioShock, was it Elizabeth Comstock? Everyone loved her model that much that they started modding her in the game to have less clothes, as men do. So I know Blender definitely jumped leaps and bounds, all because of
people wanted more realism.
Exactly. But yeah, the amount of mods.
Bobby hair. We want.
All I want is a very nice hunky man with a big dick. Is that too much to ask for in a video game? Apparently so.
Well, thank God you can actually kick your dick out. When's the game? And it's not games.
Yeah, Cyberpunk. Yeah. It's
open Baldur you can as well.
Yeah, it's wild that there is games that let you choose that, and I always feel like they're games that have more creative liberty.
Beings have dicks.
Yeah, exactly.
And have vulvas, and it's I don't understand. It's this. Maybe it's a Western thing. Our fear of nudity, not even on the sexual side, just our fear of nude characters in general, just wild. It's just finally we're kind of like turning the other side. I think it's because also when people think of video games, they think it's such a juvenile everything that's selling. We no longer think that, but it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think for a while people thought video games were just a juvenile thing that you grow out of, and so it's not true anymore. And so we want to see things that are mature. We want to see things that are adult and inspire and titillate, things like that. So I think we need to get over this sense of like, it's creepy that there'd be someone naked on this train. It's like, no, we're still there even in the movie stage, but we're creating commercial characters. There's no reason why we need to care more.
No, exactly. Especially with some of the things that you see in certain video games where, like they'll do drugs, they'll, as you said, rip skulls out and things like that. But God forbid you see a PP. That's just too far.
Right. And we only got at the point. I mean, we think we're in this sort of turning point, right? Which we kind of are, but we still are a ways off. We haven't really seen a lot of explicit scenes. We haven't seen hard things, We haven't seen holes. We haven't seen like the level of detail that we would say brings it into that next level of play, And even if games want to make those things optional, because there are games that they have reduce the amount of blood or reduce the amount of explicit gore, which is totally great. I think they could have something similar for the sex side as well. Having that reference that you made when it just kind of like fades to black. Why not that the default? And if someone's like, okay, that's a little bit more than I want on my TV right now when I'm playing through the RPG, all this, or just say, okay, well, maybe the noodle instead of or something like that. But we want the option. We don't want this to be decided for. We want an option. And it's like, when you have a person like you or me, we're going to turn all the way up to the bottom.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
We want to see every little crust, so it's like, let's go.
It's like a good example of kind of what you've just said is the indie game available on Steam, House Party, which, your goal in the game is basically to hook up with this girl. But I think every character there you can hook up with, but you need to kind of do a set of tasks to kind of win their favor, sort of thing. But they have a streamer friendly mode, which basically puts censorship bars over any nudity. But you don't need to have that if you don't want it. You could have full nudity.
Yeah, why not?
And
it's not a big deal.
The thing with that game is that game's actually endorsed. It's, I don't know if you know the Game Grumps.
No.
Okay, so Game Grumps, they're a couple of friends based in the States. And they played the game from, I think, alpha. And the game devs were like, oh yeah, we want to put you in the game. I don't think you can have sex with them, but you do get these kind of unique interactions with them, where if you get your dick out, sort of thing, they'll be like, "Wow, that's a pee-pee." So it's
they have a specific interaction for us.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool. And again, that's a game that kind of, when that first came out, everyone was like, "What the fuck is this? Like, this is just straight up porn. Like, why would you make a game like this?" But it kind of gained its own cult following. It's not something I've personally played. I try not to have any smut on Steam, although don't look at my mod history for Skyrim. That's a different thing. But
on Steam, or like do you have a different opinion about different platforms or something? Or?
I mean, Steam's kind of my main platform for gaming.
Okay.
I've been using Steam since, God, I think 2010. So yeah, I've had Steam for like 14 years. And like, I've had Humble Bundle every month for the last 8 or something. So it's just, there's so many games there that it's kind of like, when Epic came out and they were like, hey, if you come to our platform, we've got this really good deal. It just, and also the Epic launcher just does not work for me. So I abandoned Epic very quickly.
Yeah, I'm a Steam guy myself. So
I know evil corporation overlord Gaben, but it's a decent platform, so I just kind of stick to that. But I do use itch.io occasionally, because there's a few Patreon games that I was subscribed to that you could download using that. So that's kind of one that I've used before, and that one's really good for kind of the niche indie games, so shall we say. And I do like that has a really good Patreon integration, where as long as I think anyway, as long as your email is the same email for itch.io as it is for your Patreon subscription, they link together, so you automatically, once you subscribe to a tier, you then unlock that tier of whatever it is game you've got for itch.io.
Cool.
So it's kind of nice, because it means that you can directly support the developers. I think some of them you can just buy standalone, so like if you just wanted the one game and not support the developer monthly, you can absolutely do that.
Cool.
But the integration is really good, because there's a couple. I've got an interview scheduled with another game developer later this week. He's working on a very, I would say it's a very specific niche of kind of kink-led games. He's running a game called Incubus Realms, but I'll let him discuss that in his episode. He's a lovely man from Belgium, and I've been following him on Patreon for, God, about 2 years now. It's been a while that I've been following him. But yeah, the game is not finished, but he releases updates, and it's really good, because like you'll move into a new area and it'll just be like sketched out. It's not ready yet, but you do still get interactions and things. So it's kind of interesting to talk.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk to different game developers and the kind of the fetish scene of the video game industry, because there is not that many. I do feel like we kind of know about this. Yeah, like it's you've got your
at a certain scale.
You've got your big names like Fexno. If you've had the internet for the last, I'd say 10 years maybe, and you're kinky, you'll know who Fexno is, because you have Corruption of Champions or Trials in Tainted Space. First one spells cock, second one spells tits. Mature, yeah. But they're both text-based games that were kind of, if you're on the fetish scene, you've probably played them. And some of them go into very deep detail of kink and fetish. If you get one of the modded versions, shall we say, because I know people update it, but again, they're easy to get. And it's developers like that kind of, I don't want to say paved the way, because that feels wrong for indie development.
Right.
I don't really know how I would word that, because they kind of, I would say they opened the door to encourage people to kind of take more risks, because I feel like that was a bigger risk.
Yeah, I think when you see examples like that, and the bigger industry doesn't like to take those risks, obviously, because they have to stay in a sort of like Disney mentality. But I feel like that's why indies are special, because they not only can take those risks, they generally need to. They just set themselves apart, to make themselves a little bit more unique and special in that way. So I think it is another reason to encourage more of that in these space. Not that it only can exist there, but I feel like in the AAA space, it's still very deliberate and care.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's like a publisher thing or if it's, a studio-based thing, but I do feel like there is publishing companies out there that would maybe actively avoid that. And I don't really know if it's just because there's maybe a stigma surrounding it or what it is, but I definitely do feel there is kind of a block almost, because as you say, you don't really see it in the AAA titles. It's really only these indie developers that are self-publishing that you really see that sort of stuff.
Right, and it's kind of a combination, because you have something that is new IP, it's much more likely that you'll be able to do something like that. But when you have established IP that's licensed, no, they won't let you do that. You can't go into a territory with an unknown character, even though they could be sexual, and sort of like aren't any more of those images on. Just, we don't see that in movies, so we generally want to see that in games that are, based on like the Marvel Universe or Star Wars or Star Trek or any of that. They're just very, very careful about their spaces like that. And so for some creativity, but I just feel like you're much less likely to see it in established IP.
Yeah, I do get that. I do feel like there has been a few times where that has been kind of broken almost. Especially when you think of things like Star Trek, where it started out where, there was no swearing, there was no profanities, there was no exacerbated emotion, and now you get a lot of that. Although I have to say,
once it enters sort of the main canon, of that creative world, then the games would definitely be okay with that. But they just sort of have to follow pretty close to, I guess, what the rest of the property is.
Well, I think you've got a lot of developers working on. Producers working on Star Trek nowadays, especially when you've got like Mike McMahon working on Lower Decks. You do get, I guess, a little bit sexually suggestive in that sort of one, just because he is an adult cartoon director. Although I say adult cartoon as if it's porn, no, just cartoons that are aimed at adults. So you do get a lot more suggestive themes.
Rick and Morty,
Yeah, exactly. So you do get a lot more suggestive themes and, questionable things on your screen. Not like...
Yeah, I mean, that's one reason I like animated, like double animation like those, because they can go so many different places that live action struggles with, just sort of the ability to do so. So the fact that they're doing it in the Star Trek is kind of fun. And then they did a crossover episode, which was awesome. A Station Rules. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yes, that was so good.
Pretty cool.
I'm just a big Jack Quaid fan, so getting to see him as Boimler was absolutely fantastic. Actually, that just reminds me of something else. Talking about kind of fetish in media from established studios, Amazon Studios and The Boys. Have you watched The Boys?
I haven't watched The Boys. Yeah. Well, I would say maybe like first couple of seasons I'm caught up to.
Okay.
So I feel like some of these like really interesting things with IP Go ahead, but yeah,
you probably know what one I'm going on about to start with, which is
right the one where the guy crawled into the dude.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty rad.
Can I just say none of that was, or that was an actual set. Somebody has studied for years at university level to get their degree in set design. They have honed their skills for all those years.
You mean just like the place and what it represented in that scene?
Yep, they spent all those years, all that effort, and they had to build a larger than normal cockhead with a piss slit that somebody could crawl into. And, you know, if that doesn't say fetish in media, I don't know what does.
Well, like, also, you know, the fact that they went through the urethra versus just like king calling, but also that was different because they said that they were sounding, and that is less familiar to people, and probably made people ask more questions. Yeah,
well,
people who do that, it's like, absolutely.
Was it sounding or was it vor? That's the real question.
I mean, it's really not sounding unless it's sort of like a solid object, right?
Yeah, I feel like it was more vor than anything else, which again is another fucking kettle of fish. But it's they kind of really challenged a lot of different approaches, because like not even 5 minutes after that scene, you see him trying to crawl up Frenchie's trouser leg to try and crawl in his ass and do the same thing again. So it's quite interesting because I mean I think that's probably the best example that you could really use for promotion of fetish in media is The Boys, because again that kind of
tragic ending, but
definitely. But you've kind of got
the whole series is hectic, so it's not like that was.
You've got drugs, you've got violence, a fucking lot of violence, and then obviously with that you're gonna have sex. So you kind of have that holy trinity of adult entertainment, I suppose. And a lot of video games kind of colonize on two of them, which is the shooty and the other kind of shooty, which is drugs, like Bioshock, where you've got all your mad weapons, and then you have your plasmids. So you've got drugs and violence. Saints Row, drugs and violence. Fallout, drugs and violence. But they kind of miss the third one, which is the kind of sexual aspect, which I think is kind of sad.
Well, it's crazy. It's crazy and sad because it's
missing out.
Basic, a lot of people's lives. Yeah. I
mean, it's fine to play games and fantasize, and you say like, oh, I'm trying to think of a good example here without making myself sound like I'm a serial killer. It's like you play a game and you're like, okay, today I'm gonna be like a rogue assassin that's gonna stab people, and at the same time you're like, but I also want to go to a club and hook up with another assassin, and you can't do that. And it's like, okay, well, I can do the shooty and the stabby, but I can't do the other kind of shooty and stabby.
I'm not ready to banging, and I go back to the shooty and stabby.
I want to do the shooty and the stabby, and I also want to do the stabby and shooty. Like,
yes, exactly. In that order.
Yeah, in that order. So it kind of is a bit sad. But just on that, like, what advice would you?
Are you hopeful for? Go ahead.
Just what advice would you give to aspiring game developers, particularly those in LGBT, who want to try and get into games development?
I mean, based on our discussion, I would say, let's tell these stories that are left represented. There are many ways to get into this, whether it's if you're more on the creative side or you're more on the artistic side. I got into combining both my technical interests, in software testing, and then kind of becoming more of a developer in that space. And then just sort of mirroring my own RPG and sci-fi interest into it. But I would say find an angle that's going to put you in industry, and then just like own your creativity into that, and try to assert your own story. Because if you have the ability to, let's push for more representation, let's push for more visualization, and find those angles and keep in do so, which your voice will be used or heard, whether it's in a larger gaming organization, or if you're fortunate enough to be in the indie space on your own or a small team. Because as we've discussed, there's so much room for more, and I feel like there's so much interest. It's not like people are explicitly looking for it. It's just they aren't in a sort of roundabout way, because when it does hit the market, people are just eating it up, quite literally. And so, some super encouraging people who want to go into gaming. I know it's a challenging space. It seems like right now, just because of the way the job market has been sort of pivoting people around a bit. But I would say, don't give up. I feel like sometimes even smaller are better. Carve out space, for your own creativity, or own whatever form it may take, and let it be seen. Maybe if you have a finished project, for instance, just making stuff, because you'll get to that place in your creator's pursuit, which you'll be able to pull from all of that stuff that making or creating in a third finished or a half finished form. So yeah, just keep on it.
Oh, definitely. Because I feel like in regards to kind of fetish in video games, it is going to be the indie developers that push the kind of AAAs for it. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to start at the AAA level and trickle down. It's going to start at the indie developer level and kind of push its way up to the AAAs.
Absolutely.
So I definitely feel like, people like yourself and, aspiring developers are going to be the ones to parent this change.
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers for us to tell those stories too. So, we should challenge ourselves to do so, because, we don't have to go ahead and trying to cut it out editing or before. We don't have big publishers telling us, you can't go through if X, Y, and Z are included. So we should take those risks, and I think we'll be rewarded for them.
Definitely. And speaking of rewards, there's a particular special reward that's now available in Galaxy Legion 2, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so after, our amazing discussion about Galaxy Legion and I think most first-person shooters that are out there, I'm really excited to announce that Galaxy Legion 2 is offering an exclusive in-game item just for the listeners of the podcast. It's a fairly unique, which Dan has created especially for the podcast listeners. All you need to do is redeem the code DeviantPup, all one word, lowercase. To redeem it, you just go to the Galaxy Legion 2 help/support page, enter the code in the redeem a code box, and you'll find the special item waiting for you in your inventory.
You can also go to the Galaxy Legion 2/promo, and you can enter it in there as well.
Oh, okay. Double link. That makes it so much easier. So galaxylegion2.com/promo.
Yeah, and then you can enter the code there. Nice. And it will show your inventory in minutes or less than that. Seconds.
Oh my god. So yeah, I may have already got the item and tested it out, and it's actually quite a nice item to have. It helps me.
Yeah, I wanted it to be something that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted it to be something that was a little bit more unique like there's not really a specific item like it. It offers a little bit more reward of its use than other items of its type. So yeah, it's really something that people are going to hold on to for a little bit longer. So
yeah, well,
and have to be able to eat.
I will say it helped me out of a sticky situation earlier. Because
good.
I was where was I? I was at an outpost, and I was talking to a guy, and I just noticed like my hull will go down by 33 points. I'm like, but there was a nest next to the village, and apparently one of them had just decided to start attacking me. So I was like, all right, okay. So I did use it, and it managed to get me somewhere safer. So that's the only hint that I'll give as to kind of what it is. So you need to redeem it if you want to check that out. So again, the code to redeem it is DeviantPup, all lowercase. But I think that is pretty much all the questions I have for you. Do you have any for me?
Let's see. Well, I think I cut you off earlier, but what do you think is next? Like, are you optimistic for what are you seeing in the industry going? I mean, obviously in the indie space, but do you foresee more of this or more of the same? In terms of the level of sync that we're going to see maybe in the next few years on the horizon?
I am hopeful because you are seeing changes happen gradually. I definitely feel that in, TV and film, it took a while. Like, the first kind of gay kiss that you see in even Star Trek was Deep Space Nine with Jadzia and the kind of previous host's ex-wife. And, even the director of that had said that, they could have done more. But obviously they're restrained by the networks. Star Trek having the first interracial kiss was a big thing back when that first happened.
Yeah. So, and it should have been earlier with Next Generation. There was that episode with Riker and that Janai, which was the species that kind of was Jaculus.
Yep.
And the actress that they had, there was a comment that I read later that they might have cast it as the man, like, even though it was presented as gender was person, but it had some pushback, and so that would have been, I guess, technically the first gay kid if they had cast it as a male character or as a male actor. But they didn't want to take the risk, and so they instead just make him very exclusive, as I said, and that was unfortunate. Yeah, you had to wait for DS9.
Yeah, exactly. I had to wait for DS9, which, I'm not going to complain. I do quite enjoy DS9. But I think in video games, they seem to be a little bit slower moving with these things. And don't get me wrong, I do think that with indie media, it is going to come a long way, because indie developers march to the beat of their own drum, which I think is really good because they're not really held back by, corporate rulings, or you can say this but you can't say this, or you can do this but you can't do this. They can kind of do what they want, provided they're, if they're getting published, the publisher will have their own book of do's and don'ts. But if you're self-publishing, then kind of, we'll see them develop very fast. But I think AAA's, it's going to take a while for them to realize that, there is a demand, maybe not, well, I'm guessing it's a demand that's bigger than what they think. I think they kind of think there's no demand, and that's why they don't do it. But I think if they realized that there was a kind of market for it, they would probably be more inclined to develop these sort of things. Especially when if you look at AAA titles and you look at the modding communities that support them, it it doesn't take you long to realize that the first mods that come out for AAA title games is usually nudity mods. I think it was the Resident Evil 2 remake that went live, and then 1 hour later the nude mod for the main character was available. An hour.
Wow, 1 hour later.
So it kind of tells you the demand is there, but yeah, as I said, Blender came a long way. It kind of does tell you that there is a demand for it, and I think these AAA title companies are either they're not really fully grasping it, or they're ignoring it. And I'd like to think that they're just not fully grasping it and not ignoring it, because they tend not to ignore money. Looking at you, Todd Howard.
Yeah, but
how many times did he release Skyrim?
How old are you?
I've lost count of how many times I've bought Skyrim. So yeah, and all of the mods that you can get for that.
I'd say I played through once and then I put it down.
I occasionally go back to it. Like I got Skyrim just before my geography exam and spent the day playing it. I did okay in the exam. I could have done better, but Skyrim.
The ace of Skyrim, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, ace Skyrim. College of Winterhold. I run the place now. It's just it's one of those things where I think it will take a while, but I do expect it to happen. I think maybe I was going to say 10 years, but I would like to think in the next 5 years we're going to see kind of Fetish in a mainstream game.
Let's hope. Like you said.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's everything from me. If you have anything else to say or anything else to add?
No, thanks for having me on, and thanks for broaching this stuff. I think this is one of those areas that even in the space that we work at, it's more time spent talking about player. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. If anyone is interested in playing the game, you can find Galaxy Legion online. The new game, Galaxy Legion 2, can be found at galaxylegion2.com. I think that pretty much covers it. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.